I'm any new province, and is this possibly Pauper playable? That's the question I want to answer about this deck, Cascade Aggro, that Kazuya 3 took to a 5-0 finish in a Pauper League this past week. I had to play this deck for a couple of reasons. First of all, it plays Violent Outburst, which costs 1, a red and a green, it's an instant, and most importantly, it has the Cascade mechanic, which means when you cast this spell, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Put the exiled cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Violent Outburst also gives your creatures +1/+0 until end of turn. I probably don't have to try very hard to convince you that Cascade is an insane mechanic. It gets you free spells. Just look at Living End combo in Modern or even Bloodbraid Elf that was recently unbanned. The thing is, I've never seen it used to its full potential in Pauper, which makes this deck all the more exciting to try. The second reason I'm stoked to try out Kazuya's deck this week is that it uses a card that was downshifted to common in Masters 25. This is Frenzied Goblin. It costs 1 red, it's a 1/1, and it says, whenever Frenzied Goblin attacks, you may pay red. If you do, target creature can't block this turn. Both of these cards hint at the fact that this deck is an explosive, aggressive machine. To support this strategy, it runs a ton of haste creatures. I'll start by going over those. First is Jund Hackblade, which costs a hybrid black or green mana, in our case green, and also 1 red mana. It's a 2/1 and it says, as long as you control another multicolored permanent, Jund Hackblade gets +1/+1 and has haste. Without its bonuses, Jund Hackblade is a little unexciting. Luckily, there's another 2-drop with haste that goes along very well with it. This is Rip Clan Crasher. It costs a red and a green, it's a 2/2 and it has haste. An opponent recently stole a game from me by top decking this great hasty threat. It feels almost cathartic to be able to play it here. This is Mud Brawler Cohort. It costs 1 and a red, it's a 1/1, it has haste, and it says Mud Brawler Cohort gets +1/+1 as long as you control another red creature. Our last fast creature is Goblin Heel Cutter. It costs 3 and a red, it's a 3/2, and it says whenever Goblin Heel Cutter attacks, target creature can't block this turn. It has dash 2 and a red, which means you may cast the spell for its dash cost. If you do, it gains haste and it's returned from the battlefield to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. This seems kind of inconvenient, but it actually helps Goblin Heel Cutter dodge sorcery speed removal. It also has the same effect as Frenzied Goblin, so we can keep getting our hasty creatures in for damage. Mono Green Stompy is known for having a few Solana Ledgewalkers to dodge opponents' targeted removal. We have Naya Hushblade, which is similar but has higher natural stats because we don't have as many pump spells or auras as Mono Green Stompy does. Naya Hushblade is a 2/1, it costs a hybrid red or a white mana, always red in our case, and a green mana. It says, as long as you control another multicolor permanent, Naya Hushblade gets +1/+1 and has Shroud. You may not have seen a lot of this card in recent history, but it's a hallmark in Zoo decks because of how huge it can get by turn 2. This is Curd Ape. It costs 1 red, it's a 1/1, and it says Curd Ape gets +1/+2 as long as you control a forest. Our last creature is Burning Tree Emissary. It costs 2 hybrid red or green mana. We can pay both of those. It's a 2/2 and it says, when Burning Tree Emissary enters the battlefield, add red, green to your mana pool. I can see this being incredibly explosive with Violent Outbursts. You cascade into a Burning Tree Emissary, get a little mana back, play a haste creature, and then attack for a ton. Next, I'll talk about the few other non-creature spells included in this deck as a form of interaction. Usually we want to interact with our opponent by just running over their board and killing them as fast as possible. First is Chain Lightning, which does serve as interaction killing one of our opponent's creatures, but it also does a lot to support our theme of trying to kill our opponent very quickly. It costs 1 red, it's a sorcery, and it says Chain Lightning deals 3 damage to target creature or player. Then that player or that creature's controller may pay red. If the player does, he or she may copy this and choose new targets for that copy. I'm not really sure why Chain Lightning's being run over Lightning Bolt here, but I'm interested to find out. Next is Elephant Guide. It costs 2 and a green, and it says Enchant Creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3, which is honestly pretty decent for 2 and a green, but it also has, when enchanted creature dies, create a 3/3 green elephant creature token. If we're playing against an opponent that has a ton of removal, or even a few creatures that can get in the way of ours and try to trade, Elephant Guide will make sure we still have a body left over to win the game with afterwards. Alright, let's look at this mana base. First, we have 2 Fire Wild Border Post. They cost 1 red and a green, and they say you may pay 1 and return a basic land you control to its owner's hand rather than pay Fire Wild Border Post's mana cost. Fire Wild Border Post enters the battlefield tapped, and when it becomes untapped, it can add red or green. I think these are replacing Karoo lands. They help you hit land drops when you're cheating on your mana, and they also can't get hit by any of the land destruction spells that may be popular in the meta right now. We have 4 Evolving Wilds, which say tap, sacrifice Evolving Wilds, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. These are just for mana fixing, they're standard Pauper fetches. We have 5 basic forests and 9 basic mountains. We want lots of untapped lands so that we can play a hasty creature on turn 2. Okay, let's look at the sideboard. First, we have Blazing Volley, which deals 1 damage to each creature your opponents control, something that costs a little bit less than Electrickery, even though you can only cast it at sorcery speed. We also have 2 Flame Slash for killing those 4/4s out of Affinity, 2 Natural States for killing even more stuff out of Affinity. We have 3 Mark of Mutiny, which is really spicy. It costs 2 and a red, and it says, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on it and untap it. That creature gains haste until end of turn. That's a pretty nice looking Ulamog's Crusher you got over there, opponent. We have 3 Pulse of Marasas for getting back one of our creatures and gaining more life than burn can damage us for. We have 2 Tangles, which are fogs, a little odd to see in an aggro shell, but I'm willing to try it out here. And 3 River Boas. If our opponent is on a ton of removal, we can use River Boa to value them out of it. And there it is, Cascade Aggro. I'm still in awe about how cool this deck is, and I can't wait to play it. We're going to take this deck live into a league on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Atlantic time at twitch.tv/anynewprovince. We're there every Tuesday night playing possibly Pauper playable decks. Before I go, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd seriously appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know you've enjoyed everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech, and hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday night.